All right, so I want to show you how we can solve the double declaration problem with GraphQL. So in this case, we have a very simple app. It is scaffolded using WunderControl init with a template for NextJS, Postgres, and Prisma. So we're using Prisma to migrate the database and NextJS as the full stack React framework. And now let's dive into the demo. So this is our basic page. You can see a very simple page. We show the user and some new posts. And I remove the cookies so that we can go through the login flow. In this case, we're using GitHub for the login. And on the bottom side of the page, we get some top messages, which are declared in this query here. So going back there, if you look at the top of the page, so we log in with OpenID Connect or any other OpenID Connect provider that is like Auth0, Okta, anything essentially, or GitHub. We have a demo account for GitHub login, so every starter comes with GitHub login, and you can see my basic claims from my GitHub login, like providers GitHub, then email verified, my name, nickname, user ID, etc., etc. So that's the basic info you get with every login. And then at the bottom of the page, you see a bunch of top messages. So that's what we have so far. Going back to the components here at the top, line 4, we have our next page. It uses the use WunderGraph hook that gives us the user and the client and login. And then at the bottom, we have the top messages component. It uses a pre-generated hook, use query.topMessages. So just by writing the top message query, you get all that code generated, so you don't have to worry too much about it. All right, so now we want to add the capability to add a new post or a new message to our chat or whatever it is. And you can see what we did, like it is a bit predefined. So I'm just copying the create post.graphql file because I don't want to type it all out. But essentially we create a new file. It is named new post.graphql. So that's the convention. Inside the operations folder, you create .graphql files and they define the endpoints for your application. So the same way in NextJS, you have file-based routing in your pages and API folder. The same way you define your backend functions in WunderGraph using the operations folder. Okay, so what you can currently see is we have 3 variables for our mutation. So the mutation to create a post. And those 3 are name, email, and message. So we need name and email to find the current login user and create a message on behalf of this user. And either, you can see that in line 6, either the user already exists, then we look it up via the unique key email. And if the user does not yet exist, we create one with the user name and email. And those variables, the user cannot supply them. They come from the claims. So by authenticating the user, they get those claims, and then we inject them at runtime into the query. So the user is not able to set those variables, which also means if you use the add from claim directive inside the query, it automatically defines the query to be a query that requires authentication. So the user is not able to do that mutation if they are not authenticated. And then the third variable, the message, in line 4, that's the one that the user can actually supply. All right, so now we have defined all our variables. And you can see here, I reboot WunderGraph. And what it does is it introspects all the methods, all the files that we created, and you can see it picked up the new post operation and it created a handler. So by default, all operations that we define, they will be persisted within WunderGraph, and we then generate an endpoint for that and generate a type-safe client, etc. All right, so we have this endpoint. Now you can see this is the generated client. So it has a new post mutation. Then we also generate a React hook that wraps the client to make it more easy to use. And then we do something special. So here we also have the JSON schema, which we extracted from the operation. So you can see we generate two JSON schemas, one for the input, that's line 105, and one for the response, 111. And if you look closely, you see, okay, the input, it is of type object, and it requires one field message. And the type of the field message, that is a string. Okay, so if you look back at our mutation, you can see in line 4, we want to have a message, and it is required. That's the exclamation mark or bang after the string, and type is string. So that's what we want to have here. And all this is parsed and extracted into the JSON schema. Now, the JSON schema is very, very helpful for two things. So one is, on the backend side of things, we create this endpoint / new post. It takes the post message, and with the JSON schema, we can validate what you're sending to this endpoint. So in this case, we would expect that you send a message and it should be type string, and it is required. At the same time, there's a very handy library that allows us to create a user interface or a form from a JSON schema. So because we extracted that data, we can now use the JSON schema new post input. So that's the JSON schema we extracted from our new post form. And we can generate a form component from that. So all we do is we import this new post form. And now you can see we have a form added here. So we can submit a message. And you can see somehow our top messages are not updating. And if we refresh the page, the messages are coming. So it looks almost fine. So one slight thing we are missing is we need to set Refetch mounted queries on success. So currently, the top queries, they don't automatically update. So in line 21, you can see we take the top 10 messages, but they don't automatically update, or we don't automatically refetch this. So what we can do here is, with Refetch mounted queries on success, we're saying that if the form submits some data and the operation is successful, meaning we get a 200 OK response from the backend, we want to refetch all queries that are currently mounted in the viewport. So all queries that are visible should be refetched or reevaluated, which is a very simple pattern to say, okay, this top message is at the bottom, which is in the viewport. It should just refetch and check if there's new data. So if we do that and we type in a new message, you see that the UI instantly updates. Try it again just to verify, and you see everything's working fine. So that's pretty good. And just to recap, what we did is we create this new post.graphql file. We just type out our query, our mutation, the GraphQL operation, and then everything is essentially generated from the client to the backend. So client and backend, they work hand in hand. Then we have the hooks that wrap the client. We generate a form component that takes the JSON schema and renders a form. By the way, you can fully customize the form. So if you want to have a custom theme or custom CSS for that form, you can do whatever you want. It's just, yeah, for the demo purpose, I didn't spend any time on that. And we also generate a TypeScript file with the JSON schema. So if you have any other tools that work with JSON schema, you could use that too for validation or anything. So in a nutshell, you write a mutation and we generate everything else. You import a form, you tweak the UI to your desire, you change the CSS, the modeling, and then, yeah, you're essentially good to go, and you have a complete application with authentication, with authorization, and everything you need. All right, then thanks for watching and see you later.